Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his face as he crawled out from under the broken water recycler. The machine had stopped working 3 days ago, and the replacement parts from Earth were still 6 months away. He grabbed his tools and started taking apart the filter system again. This was the 5th time this week he had to fix something that should have been replaced years ago. "Jake, we got another problem," called Lisa Rodriguez from across the maintenance bay. She was holding a tablet and shaking her head. "The mining drill on Sector 7 just broke down. That's the 3rd one this month." Jake stood up slowly. His back hurt from bending over machines all day. At 42 years old, he felt much older than he should. Running New Haven Colony was not the job he had planned when he left Earth 15 years ago. Back then, he thought he would be managing a growing, successful settlement. Instead, he spent every day just trying to keep 50,000 people alive on a planet that seemed to hate them. "What broke this time?" Jake asked, walking over to. "Look at Lisa's tablet." The main drill head cracked. "We can weld it back together, but it won't last long. We need new equipment, but you know what Earth Command will say." Jake knew exactly what they would say. New Haven was not important enough for new equipment. The colony barely produced enough rare metals to pay for the supply ships that came twice a year. Earth had bigger, richer colonies to worry about. New Haven was on its own. "Get Sam Parker to look at it," Jake said. "If anyone can make that drill work, it's him." Lisa nodded and walked away. Jake looked around the maintenance bay. Every machine was old and patched up with spare parts. The walls were covered with wires and pipes that had been added over the years as systems broke down and needed fixes. It looked like a junkyard, but somehow everything still worked. Amy Walsh, the colony's doctor, walked into the bay. She looked tired like everyone else on New Haven. "Jake, we need to talk about the medical supplies. We're running low on antibiotics again." "How low?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer would be bad. "We have maybe 2 months left, if we're careful." The last supply ship was supposed to bring more, but half the medical cargo was damaged during the trip. Jake rubbed his forehead. The supply ships from Earth were old and unreliable, just like everything else they got. The newer, better ships went to the important colonies. New Haven got whatever was left over. "We'll have to make do," Jake said. "Maybe Kate Johnson can help. She's good with chemistry." Amy nodded but didn't look happy. "I'll talk to her, but Jake, if we get a disease outbreak, we won't be able to handle it." After Amy left, Jake walked to the control room. Ben Carter was sitting at the communications station, trying to contact other colonies. The young man spent most of his time alone, listening to radio signals from across human space. It was his job to keep New Haven connected to the rest of humanity, even though most days it felt like they were forgotten. "Any news from Earth?" Jake asked. Ben looked up from his screens. "The usual. More colonies getting attacked by something called the Zephyrian Empire. Sounds bad, but it's all happening in the inner systems. Nothing about us out here." Jake wasn't surprised. New Haven was so far from Earth that news took weeks to reach them. They were in what everyone called the Outer Rim, the edge of human space where only the desperate or unlucky ended up. "What about supply ships?" Jake asked. "The next one isn't due for 4 months, and Jake..." Ben paused, looking uncomfortable. "I picked up some chatter about budget cuts. Earth Command is talking about reducing support for Outer Rim colonies." Jake felt his stomach drop. Less support meant fewer supply ships, older equipment, and more people depending on him to keep them alive with almost nothing. He had been a military engineer before coming to New Haven. He knew how to fix things and solve problems, but even he had limits. "Keep monitoring," Jake said. "Let me know if you hear anything else." Jake walked to the observation deck on the top level of the colony headquarters. Through the thick glass, he could see the mining operations in the distance. Giant machines moved slowly across the rocky landscape, digging up the rare metals that were New Haven's only source of income. The work was dangerous and hard, but it was all they had. The planet itself was not friendly to humans. The air was too thin to breathe without filters. The temperature changed quickly from very hot during the day to freezing at night. Dust storms happened without warning and could damage equipment that was not properly protected. Most people from Earth would look at New Haven and wonder why anyone would want to live there. But Jake had learned something important during his years on New Haven. The colonists were tough. They had to be. When supply ships were late or equipment broke down, they found ways to survive. They learned to fix things with whatever they could find. They helped each other when times got hard. They had become good at making something from nothing. Mike Davis, a former space marine who now worked in the mines, walked up to Jake on the observation deck. "Boss, the workers are asking about the food situation. The protein recyclers are acting up again." Jake sighed. "Another problem to solve. I'll look at them tomorrow. Tell everyone we might have to go on half rations for a few days." Mike nodded. He had been through worse during his military service. "The people won't complain. They know you're doing your best." As night fell over New Haven, Jake looked out at the lights of the colony. 50,000 people were counting on him and his small team to keep them alive. They had no military protection, no backup from Earth, and equipment that barely worked. But they were still here, still fighting to survive. Jake didn't know that. In a few hours, Ben Carter would pick up strange signals from deep space. He didn't know that New Haven's greatest test was coming. All he knew was that tomorrow would bring new problems to solve, and he would find a way to solve them, just like he always did. Admiral Crichton stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars through the large windows. His tall, gray-skinned form cast a shadow across the control panels as his red eyes studied the tactical displays. The Zephyrian Empire had been winning battles across human space for 6 months now, and every victory made him more confident. "Admiral," called Subcommander Velthos from his station, "we are approaching the target system. The human colony, called New Haven, should be visible soon." Crichton walked to the tactical display. The screen showed a small planet orbiting a weak star. According to their intelligence reports, this was one of the weakest human settlements they had found. No military ships, no defense platforms, just a mining colony with old equipment and desperate people. "How many ships do they have?" Crichton asked. "None, Admiral. Our scouts report only cargo vessels and mining equipment. The colony has 50,000 humans, but they have no weapons beyond basic tools." Crichton made a sound that was like laughter in his species. The humans had been easy to defeat so far. Their technology was simple compared to Zephyrian weapons. Their ships were slow and poorly armed. Most human colonies surrendered after seeing just one Zephyrian battle cruiser. "This will be good practice for the new soldiers," Crichton said. "We can test our new weapons on a target that cannot fight back." The Zephyrian fleet had 12 ships. Each one was twice the size of the largest human vessel they had encountered. Their energy shields could stop most human weapons. Their plasma cannons could destroy a human ship with one shot. The Zephyrians had conquered dozens of planets across the galaxy using these advantages. "Admiral, we are receiving intelligence updates from our spy network," Velthos reported. "Earth Command has abandoned this colony. No rescue ships are coming. The humans are completely alone." This made Crichton even more pleased. The Zephyrian strategy was simple. Attack the weakest human colonies first, then use the fear and panic to make the stronger colonies surrender without fighting. New Haven would be a perfect example. When other human settlements heard how quickly it fell, they would give up hope. "What resources does this colony have?" Crichton asked. "Rare metals, mostly. They mine materials that we can use for our own ships. The colony also has food production facilities and water recycling systems. After we remove the humans, we can use it as a supply base." Crichton nodded. The Zephyrian Empire was always looking for new resources to fuel their expansion. Human colonies often had useful materials, and the planets were usually good for growing food. The only problem was getting rid of the humans, but that was becoming easier with each battle. The Admiral looked at the battle reports from their recent victories. 3 human colonies had fallen in the past month. The first battle lasted 4 hours. The second took 2 hours. The third colony surrendered after 30 minutes when they saw the Zephyrian fleet approaching. "How long do you think this battle will take?" Velthos asked. "Battle?" Crichton laughed again. "This will not be a battle. We will destroy their mining equipment from orbit, then land troops to secure the facilities. The humans will surrender, or die. Either way, we will control the colony by sunset." The other officers on the bridge made sounds of agreement. They had all seen how weak human defenses were. Human weapons could barely scratch Zephyrian armor. Human ships moved like slow insects compared to Zephyrian fighters. And human soldiers ran away when they saw the superior alien technology. "Admiral, long-range sensors show activity around the colony," reported the sensor officer. "It looks like normal mining operations. They do not seem to know we are here." "Good. Maintain stealth mode until we are ready to attack. I want to see the fear in their eyes when our ships appear." Crixtel had been fighting humans for 2 years now. At first he had respected them as worthy enemies, but after so many easy victories, he saw them as weak and primitive. They fought with desperation instead of skill. They used old technology instead of developing better weapons. They always seemed surprised when the Zephyrians attacked, as if they had not learned anything from previous battles. "What about their communications?" Crixtel asked. "We are jamming all signals to and from the colony. They cannot call for help, and Earth Command cannot warn them about our approach." The Admiral walked to his command chair and sat down. The bridge crew continued their work, preparing for what they expected to be another quick victory. Weapon systems were charged. Troops were ready for landing operations. Supply teams were standing by to take control of the mining equipment. "Admiral," Velthos said, reading from his intelligence files, "there is something interesting about this colony. They have a reputation for being very good at fixing broken equipment. Earth Command calls them resourceful." "Resourceful?" Crixtal made a dismissive gesture. "That is just another word for poor. They fix old equipment because they cannot afford new equipment. This makes them weaker, not stronger." But Velthos continued reading. "They have survived several natural disasters and equipment failures that should have destroyed the colony. Somehow they always find ways to keep going. Survival is not the same as fighting," Crixtal replied. "Let them fix their machines. It will not help them against plasma cannons and ion bombs." The flagship's sensors showed the New Haven system in detail now. The planet looked small and unimportant. The mining operations covered only a small part of the surface. There were no orbital stations or defense satellites. It looked exactly like what their intelligence had promised, a weak target that would fall quickly. "Begin final approach," Crixtal ordered. "All ships to battle positions. Prepare to drop. Out of stealth mode in 30 minutes. The Zephyrian fleet moved through space like a pack of hunters. Each ship was a masterpiece of alien engineering, designed for conquest and destruction. Their crews were trained warriors who had defeated every enemy they had faced. Their weapons could level cities or destroy entire fleets." As they approached New Haven, the Zephyrians felt confident and ready. They had superior numbers, superior technology, and superior training. The humans had nothing but desperation and old mining equipment. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "we are intercepting human radio chatter from the colony. They are talking about equipment repairs and work schedules. No mention of military preparations or evacuation plans." "Perfect," Crixtal said. "They have no idea what is coming." The Admiral stood and looked out at the approaching planet. In a few hours, New Haven would be another Zephyrian victory. The colony's resources would fuel their empire's expansion. The quick defeat would spread fear among other human settlements. Crixtal had no way of knowing that the broken equipment the humans were always fixing had taught them skills that no military academy could provide. He did not understand that desperation could be a weapon more powerful than any plasma cannon, and he had never faced humans who had nothing left to lose. The Zephyrian fleet continued its approach, confident in their coming victory. Behind them, the stars watched silently as Predator moved toward what it thought was helpless prey. But in the universe, things are not always what they seem, and the weakest-looking target can sometimes bite back harder than anyone expects. Ben Carter burst into Jake Morrison's office at 3 a.m, his face pale with panic. Jake was still awake, working on supply reports by the light of his desk lamp. The colony administrator looked up as Ben stumbled through the door, nearly dropping his communication equipment. "Jake, we have a big problem," Ben said, his voice shaking. "I've been picking up signals from the outer system. They're not from any human ships." Jake felt ice in his stomach. What kind of signals? Military frequencies. Ship-to-ship communications in a language I've never heard before. And Jake... Ben paused, trying to catch his breath. There are 12 of them. Big ships moving fast, heading straight for us. Jake stood up quickly, knocking over his coffee cup. How long do we have? Maybe 6 hours, based on their speed and trajectory. Jake, these aren't traders or explorers. The signal patterns match what we've heard about those Zephyrian attacks on other colonies. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. He had heard the stories from other settlements. The Zephyrians were alien conquerors who had been destroying human colonies for months. They had advanced weapons and ships that could level entire cities. No human military force had been able to stop them. Are you sure? Jake asked, though he could see the answer in Ben's frightened eyes. I've checked 3 times. The signals are definitely alien, definitely military, and definitely coming here. Jake, we need to evacuate the colony. Jake looked out his office window at the sleeping settlement. 50,000 people lived in New Haven. They had families, children, homes they had built with their own hands. And there was nowhere to run. The cargo ships were too slow and too small to carry everyone. Even if they could evacuate, where would they go? Get everyone to the main assembly hall, Jake said. Emergency protocols. Wake up Lisa, Amy, Sam, and Mike. We're calling a leadership meeting. 20 minutes later, Jake's core team sat around the conference table in the assembly hall. Lisa Rodriguez looked grim as she studied Ben's signal analysis. Amy Walsh was checking medical emergency supplies. Sam Parker was already thinking about the colony's defensive options, though everyone knew they had almost none. So we're really under attack? Mike Davis asked. The former Marine understood military situations better than the others. How many ships did you say? 12, Ben replied. Each one appears to be much larger than anything we have. What about Earth Command? Amy asked. Can they send help? Jake shook his head. Ben already tried. Our emergency signals can't reach Earth fast enough. Even if they could, the nearest military ships are weeks away. The room fell silent as everyone understood their situation. They were alone, facing an enemy that had destroyed every human colony it had attacked. They had no weapons, no military training, and no hope of rescue. So what do we do? Lisa asked quietly. Mike Davis leaned forward. We could try to hide some people in the deep mines. The Zephyrians might not find them all. And let thousands die while we hide? Jake asked. No. If we're going to lose, we're going to make them work for it. Sam Parker had been quiet, but now he spoke up. Actually, we might not be as helpless as we think. Everyone looked at him. Sam was the colony's chief engineer, a quiet man who could fix anything and often found solutions others missed. What do you mean? Jake asked. We don't have military weapons, but we have mining equipment, big mining equipment, explosives, industrial chemicals, and we know this system better than they do. Lisa's eyes brightened as she understood what Sam was thinking. The asteroid mining platforms. They're designed to move massive chunks of rock. Exactly, Sam said. What if we loaded those platforms with ore and launched them at the alien ships? At high speed, a chunk of metal becomes a very effective weapon. Amy Walsh looked confused. But those platforms weren't designed for combat. No, Sam admitted. But they were designed to move fast and carry heavy loads. With some modifications, we could turn them into kinetic weapons. Jake felt a spark of hope for the first time since Ben had brought the bad news. What else do we have? The mining. Charges, Lisa said, getting excited. We have tons of explosives for breaking up asteroids. What if we hid them in the asteroid field and detonated them when the alien ships get close? The ore haulers, Mike added. They're tough and fast. We could load them with explosives and ram them into enemy ships. The fusion reactors, Sam said. If we overload them at the right moment, we could create an electromagnetic pulse that might damage their electronics. Kate Johnson, who managed the colony's hydroponic systems, had been listening quietly. Now she spoke up. The chemical processing plants. We use strong acids and bases for ore refining. Those chemicals could eat through ship hulls if we could get them in the right place. Jake looked around the table at his team. For the first time in hours, he saw determination instead of fear on their faces. They were still facing impossible odds, but they were no longer helpless. "How long would we need to set this up?" Jake asked. 4 hours, maybe 5, Sam replied. "It won't be pretty and it might not work, but it's better than waiting to die." "What about the people?" Amy asked. "We can't risk civilian lives." "We evacuate everyone to the deep mining tunnels," Jake decided. "The tunnels are shielded and far from the main facilities. If our plan fails, at least some people might survive." Mike Davis stood up. "I'll organize the evacuation and get volunteers for the defense operation. Some of the miners have military experience." "I'll handle the explosives," Lisa said. "Give me a team and access to all our mining charges." "I'll work on the fusion reactors and electromagnetic systems," Sam added. "Chemical weapons are my department," Kate said grimly. "I'll coordinate communications and watch for the alien fleet," Ben offered. Amy Walsh looked around the table. "What about medical support for the defenders?" "Set up a field hospital in the tunnels," Jake said. "But Amy, I need you to do something else. Document everything we try here. If we fail, maybe the next human colony will learn from our mistakes." Jake stood up and looked at his team. These were people who had spent years fixing broken equipment, with spare parts and determination. They had kept a failing colony alive through disasters that should have killed them all. Now they would try to defend their home with mining tools and desperate courage. "Everyone knows this is probably a suicide mission," Jake said quietly. "Anyone who wants to leave with the evacuation, no one will blame you." Nobody moved. These people had built New Haven with their own hands. They had turned a hostile planet into a home. They were not going to abandon it without a fight. "All right then," Jake said. "Let's go to work. We have 4 hours to turn a mining colony into a fortress." As his team spread out to begin their preparations, Jake walked to the observation deck one more time. In the distance, he could see the mining platforms and ore haulers that would soon become weapons. The asteroid field that had provided New Haven's livelihood would become a battlefield. Jake had been a military engineer before coming to New Haven. He knew that wars were usually won by superior technology and training, but sometimes, just sometimes, they were won by people who refused to give up no matter how bad the odds looked. The aliens were coming with advanced weapons and overwhelming force, but they had never faced humans who had learned to make miracles from scrap metal and determination. Jake Morrison stood in the makeshift command center, watching the screens that showed the approaching Zephyrian fleet. The alien ships had dropped out of stealth mode just 10 minutes ago, appearing like deadly shadows against the stars. They were bigger than anything he had ever seen, bristling with weapons that could turn New Haven into burning rubble. "All civilians are in the deep tunnels," Mike Davis reported through the radio. "Emergency blast doors are sealed. The volunteers are at their positions." Jake looked around the command center. Only 12 people remained on the surface, scattered across the mining platforms and control stations. Everyone else was hiding 3 kilometers underground, waiting to see if they would live or die. "Lisa, are the mining charges ready?" Jake asked. "All set," came Lisa Rodriguez's voice from the asteroid field. "I've got explosive charges hidden throughout the mining zone. When those alien ships get close enough, I'll turn this whole area into a fireworks show." "Sam, what's the status on the reactors?" "Ready to overload on your command," Sam Parker replied from the power station. "Jake, once I start this process, there's no going back. The electromagnetic pulse will fry every piece of electronics in the system, including ours." "Kate, are you in position?" "Chemical dispensers are loaded and ready," Kate Johnson answered from the ore processing facility. "Industrial acid mixed with metallic compounds. If we can get this stuff on their hulls, it'll eat through their armor." Jake watched the tactical display as the Zephyrian ships moved closer. They were still outside the asteroid field, probably scanning for defenses. The aliens had no idea that every piece of mining equipment was now a weapon waiting to strike. "Ben, can you hear their communications?" "They're talking about an easy victory," Ben Carter reported from his hidden position. "The Admiral is telling his crew this will be target practice. They think we're helpless." Jake felt a cold smile cross his face. "Good. Let them keep thinking that. The first 2 minutes felt like hours as the alien fleet moved into the outer edge of the asteroid field. Jake could see them clearly now on the long-range cameras. The ships were sleek and dangerous, their energy shields glowing with power. Weapon ports were opening along their hulls, preparing to destroy the mining platforms. "Now, Lisa," Jake shouted. The first explosion lit up space like a new sun. Lisa had detonated a massive mining charge hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid. The blast created a chain reaction as debris struck other hidden explosives. Within seconds, the neat formation of alien ships was scattered by flying chunks of rock and metal. "Direct hit on their lead ship," Ben reported excitedly. "Their shields are down to 60%, but the aliens recovered quickly. They began firing their plasma cannons at the mining platforms, trying to destroy what they thought were defensive positions. They didn't realize that the real weapons were the platforms themselves. "Activate the kinetic launchers," Jake ordered. Sam, Parker had spent 4 hours modifying the mining platforms that normally moved asteroids. Now they launched chunks of dense ore at incredible speeds toward the alien ships. The projectiles were too fast and too small for the Zephyrian sensors to track properly. The first kinetic impact struck Admiral Kriegstahl's flagship in the side. The ore chunk, accelerated to thousands of meters per second, punched through the alien shields like they weren't there. It tore a massive hole in the ship's hull, sending it spinning out of control. "Their flagship is damaged," Ben shouted. "I'm reading massive power failures." 2 more alien ships tried to avoid the kinetic bombardment by diving below the main asteroid field. They flew directly into Kate Johnson's trap. She triggered the chemical dispensers, releasing clouds of corrosive compounds that had been hidden among the normal mining operations. The industrial acids hit the alien ships and immediately began eating through their armor. Warning alarms sounded across the Zephyrian fleet as hull plating dissolved and internal systems were exposed to space. "Jake, they're trying to retreat," Mike Davis called out from his observation post. But Jake wasn't finished. "Sam, now! Hit them with everything!" Sam Parker began the reactor overload sequence. All 3 of New Haven's fusion reactors were pushed beyond their safety limits simultaneously. The resulting energy buildup created an artificial gravity well that pulled the retreating alien ships back toward the planet. "Gravity anomaly detected," Ben translated from the alien communications. "They can't break free." The gravity well dragged 3 Zephyrian ships into a collision course with New Haven's moon. The aliens fired their engines at maximum power, but the artificial gravity was too strong. Jake watched through the telescopes as the alien vessels crashed into the lunar surface in balls of fire. 6 ships down, 6 to go, Lisa reported. The remaining Zephyrian ships were now fighting desperately instead of attacking confidently. They had lost half their fleet in 5 minutes to what they thought were primitive humans with mining equipment. Admiral Kriegstahl's voice could be heard screaming orders in the alien language, but his damaged flagship was barely functional. "They're charging their main weapons," Ben warned. "I think they're going to try to destroy the whole colony from orbit." Jake had been waiting for this moment. "Sam, electromagnetic pulse now." The overloaded fusion reactors finally reached critical mass. Instead of exploding, they released all their energy as a massive electromagnetic pulse that washed across the entire system. Every electronic device within 100,000 kilometers was instantly fried. The Zephyrian ships went dark. Their energy shields collapsed. Their weapons powered down. Their navigation systems failed. The advanced alien technology that had seemed so superior was suddenly useless. "All alien ships are dead in space," Ben reported, working from backup equipment that had been shielded in the deep tunnels. "They're drifting without power." But the electromagnetic pulse had also knocked out most of New Haven's systems. The mining platforms were offline. The communication arrays were dark. Only the most basic backup systems were still working. "Jake, one of their ships is still moving," Mike called out. "It's the flagship. They must have some kind of backup power." Admiral Kriegstahl's damaged vessel was indeed still functional, though barely. It was limping toward New Haven's surface, probably planning to crash into the colony in a final act of destruction. Jake looked at the tactical display, thinking quickly. They had used all their prepared weapons. The reactors were offline. Most of their equipment was fried. But he still had one option left. "Lisa, do you have any mining charges left?" Just the emergency supplies in the deep tunnels. Why? Load them into the cargo hauler. We're going to ram that ship before it reaches the surface. Jake, that's suicide. Amy Walsh's voice came through the underground communication system. Maybe, Jake replied, already running toward the cargo hauler bay, but it's better than letting them destroy the colony. Mike Davis met him at the hauler carrying the last of their explosives. I'm coming with you. This is my responsibility, Jake said. And I'm not letting you do it alone, Mike replied firmly. Together, they loaded the cargo hauler with every remaining explosive charge they could find. The small ship was tough and fast, designed for moving ore between the mining platforms and the colony. Now it would carry 2 men on what was probably a one-way mission. The cargo hauler launched from New Haven's surface just as Admiral Krickstahl's flagship entered the upper atmosphere. The alien ship was huge compared to the small human vessel, but it was also damaged and slow. Jake, you don't have to do this, came Amy's voice through the radio. Yes, I do, Jake replied, pushing the hauler's engines to maximum power. This is our home. These are our people. The collision was visible from the surface as a bright flash in the sky. The cargo hauler struck the alien flagship just behind the bridge, and all the mining explosives detonated at once. The alien ship broke apart in the atmosphere, its pieces falling harmlessly into New Haven's empty wasteland. On the surface, Ben Carter watched his instruments as the last alien signals went silent. That's it, he announced to everyone listening in the tunnels. All enemy ships are destroyed or disabled. The invasion is over. 7 minutes. The battle that the Zephyrians had expected to win in hours had lasted exactly 7 minutes. And New Haven, the weakest human colony in known space, had won. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Susan Clark stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship, staring at the wreckage floating in New Haven's orbit. Her fleet of 12 military vessels had arrived, expecting to find another dead human colony. Instead, they found the scattered remains of an entire Zephyrian battle group. Admiral, we're getting reports from the surface, her communications officer announced. The colonists are alive, and they're asking if we need any help with salvage operations. Admiral Clark had been fighting the Zephyrian Empire for 8 months. She had seen colony after colony fall to the alien invaders. Each defeat had been faster than the last, as human morale collapsed and planets surrendered without fighting. The military's best ships and most experienced crews had barely managed to slow the alien advance. Put me through to the colony administrator, she ordered. The face that appeared on her screen was not what she expected. Jake Morrison looked tired but calm, sitting in what appeared to be a hastily repaired office. Behind him, she could see people working to fix damaged equipment, just like any normal day. Admiral Clark, welcome to New Haven, Jake said with a slight smile. I'm sorry about the mess in orbit. We're still cleaning up after our visitors. Mr. Morrison, the Admiral said carefully, my intelligence reports indicate that you destroyed an entire Zephyrian fleet with mining equipment. Is that accurate? Well, the mining equipment helped, Jake replied. But mostly we just got lucky. The aliens weren't expecting any resistance. Admiral Clark looked at her tactical officer, who was shaking his head in amazement. The wreckage. Analysis showed that the Zephyrian ships had been destroyed by kinetic impacts, chemical weapons, electromagnetic pulses, and massive explosions. It was the most complete military victory against the aliens that any human force had achieved. Mr. Morrison, I need to understand what happened here. My military analysts are having trouble believing the sensor data. Jake's expression became more serious. Admiral, we're just miners and engineers. When someone threatens our home, we use whatever tools we have to defend it. It turns out that mining tools can be very effective weapons if you use them right. Over the next several hours, Admiral Clark and her staff interviewed the New Haven survivors. The story they heard was incredible. 50,000 civilians, with no military training and no real weapons, had defeated the most powerful alien fleet anyone had encountered. But more importantly, they had captured alien technology and prisoners. Admiral Krickstahl had survived the crash of his flagship and was now in New Haven's makeshift detention center, along with several other Zephyrian officers. The alien technology is fascinating, Amy Walsh explained, as she led Admiral Clark through the captured equipment. Their energy shields are incredibly advanced, but they're designed to stop plasma weapons and particle beams. They never considered kinetic impacts from simple metal projectiles. And their electronics are very sophisticated, added Sam Parker, but they're also very sensitive to electromagnetic interference. Our reactor overload created a pulse that their systems couldn't handle. Admiral Clark was taking notes frantically. The Earth Defense Force had been fighting the Zephyrians for months without understanding their weaknesses. In 7 minutes, a mining colony had discovered more about alien vulnerabilities than all of Earth's military research. We need to get this information to other colonies immediately, the Admiral said. If they know how to adapt their industrial equipment, they might be able to defend themselves. Already done, Ben Carter said, holding up his repaired communication equipment. We've been broadcasting the tactical data to every human settlement we can reach. The response has been interesting. News of New Haven's victory spread across human space faster than any official military communication. Colonies that had been preparing to surrender suddenly began looking at their own industrial equipment with new eyes. Mining colonies started, practicing kinetic bombardment. Manufacturing planets began weaponizing their chemical processing plants. Agricultural worlds discovered that fertilizer could be turned into very effective explosives. Admiral, her communications officer interrupted. We're getting reports from across the sector. 17 colonies have successfully repelled Zephyrian attacks in the past 2 days using New Haven's tactics. Admiral Clark felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. What kind of success rate? 100%, Admiral. Every colony that's tried these defensive modifications has either destroyed the attacking fleet or forced them to retreat. Ambassador Tony Garcia arrived on New Haven a week later, representing the Earth Diplomatic Corps. He found Jake Morrison in the colony's main assembly hall, addressing a crowd of engineers and miners who were planning defensive upgrades for other settlements. Mr. Morrison, the ambassador said after the meeting, Earth Command wants to relocate your entire population to a safer world. You've done enough. Jake looked out the window at the mining operations, which were already back to normal production. Ambassador, with respect, this is our home. We built it, we defended it, and we're not leaving. But surely you understand the risks. The Zephyrians will probably send a larger fleet to recapture this system. Let them come, said Lisa Rodriguez, who was working on plans for improved kinetic weapons. We'll be ready. Ambassador Garcia looked around the assembly hall, where colonists were enthusiastically discussing new ways to turn mining equipment into defensive systems. These people had faced annihilation and responded by becoming more determined, not more afraid. Earth Command is also offering full military protection and upgraded equipment, the ambassador added. We appreciate the offer, Jake replied. But we've learned something important here. Military protection means depending on someone else to keep us safe. We'd rather depend on ourselves. Commander Ellen Brooks, leading an Earth Special Operations team, arrived to study New Haven's improvised defenses. She had expected to find desperate survivors hiding in bunkers. Instead, she found a thriving community that had turned their entire industrial base into a weapon system. This is remarkable, she told Jake as they toured the upgraded mining platforms. You've created a defensive network that could stop 10 times the force that attacked you. We've had to get creative, Jake admitted. When you don't have proper military equipment, you learn to make everything work as a weapon. I'd like to document these techniques for other colonies. Already done, Sam Parker said, handing her a thick manual. Complete plans for converting industrial equipment to defensive systems. We've been distributing copies to every settlement that asks. Commander Brooks flipped through the manual, amazed at the detailed instructions for turning everyday colonial equipment into military hardware. This could change everything. Colonies won't have to depend on Earth's military for protection. That's the idea, Jake said. Every human settlement should be able to defend itself. 6 months later, the Zephyrian Empire attempted their largest offensive yet against human space. They sent 300 ships to attack 50 human colonies simultaneously, expecting to overwhelm Earth's military defenses and force a complete surrender. The attack lasted 3 days and resulted in the complete destruction of the Zephyrian invasion fleet, not by Earth's military, but by mining colonies, manufacturing planets, and agricultural worlds that had learned to fight back with industrial equipment and desperate determination. The Zephyrian Emperor himself requested peace negotiations after learning that his primitive human enemies had turned every colony into a fortress. The war that had seemed hopeless for humanity ended with an alien surrender. Jake Morrison stood once again on New Haven's observation deck, watching the lights of the colony spread across the landscape. The settlement had grown significantly as people from across the galaxy came to learn the defensive techniques that had saved humanity. "Any regrets?" Amy Walsh asked, joining him at the window. "About what?" "About not taking Earth's offer to relocate to a safer world." Jake smiled, looking out at the mining operations that had become legendary across human space. "Amy, this is the safest world in the galaxy. Anyone who wants to attack us has to face 50,000 people who've learned to turn anything into a weapon." In the distance, new students were arriving for the New Haven Defense Academy, where former miners taught military officers how to think creatively about warfare. The galaxy had learned an important lesson from the weakest human colony. Sometimes the best weapon is not giving up, no matter how bad things look. And in the archives of human military history, the Battle of New Haven was recorded not as a desperate last stand, but as the moment when humanity learned that every tool can be a weapon, every citizen can be a soldier, and no colony is ever truly defenseless as long as its people refuse to surrender. The invasion had lasted 7 minutes. The AudioBook legend would last forever.